A lot of people think nothing grows in winter shade, and I used to believe that too. But here's the funny thing. Some of the easiest winter crops actually prefer low light. So instead of fighting the cold in the shade, you can use them to your advantage. And stay with me, because one of the plants toward the end is something hardly anyone talks about on YouTube. Welcome back. Today we're talking about winter crops that love shade. These are the plants that saved my garden when sunlight disappeared, and I want you to have the same results. I'll keep everything simple, practical, and straight to the point, plus a few bonuses to make your winter garden even better. Before we jump in, if you enjoy helpful garden tips and want more videos that make gardening easier, feel free to subscribe. I'd really love to have you in this little garden family. I've tested all these plants myself through some rough winters, and they consistently grow well even with barely any sun. That's why I'm confident recommending them to you. And one quick teaser before we start. There's a plant on this list that grows with almost no direct sunlight at all. And at the end, I'll share a short bonus on common winter shade mistakes to avoid. Let's start with spinach. Spinach is one of those plants that actually prefers cooler weather and soft light, so winter shade works in its favor. It grows slower in deep cold, but it stays tender and doesn't bolt. To plant it, loosen the soil, scatter the seeds, and keep the surface slightly moist until they sprout. If your winters get very cold, give it a little protection, but don't overwater because cold, wet soil can make it struggle. Bonus tip? Harvest the outer leaves first so the plant keeps producing through the season. Next is winter lettuce. This is one of my personal favorites because it stays crisp even without full sun. Shade keeps it from becoming bitter and helps the leaves stay soft all season. Plant the seeds lightly on the surface, press them in gently, and keep them consistently moist. You don't need fertilizer right away, just good soil with a bit of compost. Watch out for overcrowding because lettuce hates being squeezed too tightly. Bonus tip, stagger your planting every 2 weeks so you always have fresh leaves. Now let's talk about Swiss chard. This plant handles low light surprisingly well and keeps growing in winter when many others slow down. The stalks grow a little smaller in shade, but the leaves stay vibrant and flavorful. Plant it in loose soil with about a hand's distance between each seedling. Chard does fine in containers too, as long as the soil drains well. The only thing to watch out for is frost pockets, because heavy frost can damage young plants. Bonus tip? Pick the leaves when they're medium-sized for the best taste. Arugula is another amazing shade-tolerant crop. It loves cool weather and becomes less spicy when it grows with limited sun, which is perfect if you prefer a milder flavor. Sow the seeds thinly, cover them lightly, and let the cold air do the rest. It grows fast in winter, so you can harvest early and often. The main thing to avoid is letting the soil dry out completely, because arugula loses its tenderness when stressed. Bonus tip? Cut the leaves just above the crown so they regrow quickly. The fifth plant is Clatonia, also known as miner's lettuce. This one is almost built for winter shade. It grows happily in the cold and keeps producing tender, juicy leaves even with very little sunlight. Plant the seeds shallowly and keep them moist until they sprout. Once established, Clatonia almost needs no maintenance. Just avoid planting it in heavy, compacted soil because it likes a loose surface layer. Bonus tip? If you leave a few plants to mature, they often reseed themselves and come back year after year.
Kohlrabi is one of the most underrated winter crops, and it handles shade far better than people expect. It doesn't need strong sunlight to form those crisp, juicy bulbs. In winter shade, the flavor gets sweeter and the texture stays firm. To plant it, space the seedlings about 1.5 hands apart, so each bulb has room to swell. Keep the soil slightly moist, not soggy, because cold, wet soil can delay growth. If your nights get extremely cold, a simple cover can help it along, but most of the time, it pushes through on its own. Bonus tip, don't wait for the bulbs to get huge. Harvest them when they're about the size of a tennis ball for the best crunch. Mustard greens are another fantastic choice for shady winter spots. They love cool air and will continue producing even when sunlight is low. The shade softens their flavor a bit, giving you leaves that are bold but not overwhelming. Plant the seeds lightly and thin the seedlings once they sprout so each one has breathing room. They grow pretty fast, so you can harvest them young for tender salads or let them mature for cooking. The main thing to remember is that mustard greens respond well to steady moisture. Dry soil can make the leaves tough. Bonus tip: pick a few leaves from each plant instead of harvesting the whole plant at once to keep them producing steadily. Kale is a winter legend. It handles shade, frost, and low temperatures all at once. In winter shade, kale grows slower but becomes sweeter and more tender, especially after a cold snap. To plant it, give each seedling plenty of space, at least a foot apart, so the leaves can spread out. Water it regularly, but don't drown it because kale doesn't enjoy sitting in cold, heavy soil. If pests show up early in the season, remove damaged leaves and keep the bed tidy. Bonus tip: always harvest the lower leaves first and let the top keep growing so you get months of continuous harvests. Mache, also called corn salad, is practically made for winter shade. This little plant thrives in low temperatures and low light, and it keeps its buttery texture even in the middle of winter. Sow the seeds thickly because mache likes growing close together. Water lightly and consistently until it establishes. It doesn't need much fertilizer or attention, which makes it perfect for busy gardeners. Just avoid overwatering since the roots are fine and don't like sitting in soggy soil. Bonus tip: pick the whole rosette at once for the best flavor, and it'll often regrow if the weather stays cool. Tatsoi is one of the most reliable shade lovers for winter gardens. It forms beautiful spoon-shaped leaves and grows perfectly well with very limited sunlight. Cold weather actually improves its flavor, making it mild and slightly sweet. Plant the seeds or seedlings about 8 inches apart in loose, well-draining soil. Tatsoi stays low to the ground, which helps it handle frost without damage. Just don't let the soil dry out completely during long cold spells. Bonus tip: harvest the outer leaves or cut the full head close to the base. Either way, it keeps coming back as long as temperatures stay cool. Before we keep going, let me ask you something. Out of everything we've covered so far, which one are you most excited to try in your own winter garden? I'm genuinely curious because everyone has that one plant that instantly stands out to them. Tell me in the comments so I know what to include more of in future videos. And don't leave yet because the next plants are some of the most reliable shade growers you'll ever meet. Parsley is one of those quiet champions that just keeps going in winter. It handles low light better than most leafy herbs, and the cooler air keeps the leaves bright and flavorful. Winter shade slows its growth a little, but it stays tender for much longer. To plant it, sow the seeds a little deeper than usual and be patient because parsley takes its time to sprout. Keep the soil moist but not soggy, especially during cold spells. Just be careful not to overfeed it because too much fertilizer can make the leaves lose flavor. Bonus tip: pinch the outer stems first so the plant grows fuller over time. Cilantro is another herb that loves winter conditions and handles shade surprisingly well. In warm months, it bolts quickly, but in winter shade, it grows slowly and stays leafy for much longer. That means more harvests and fresher flavor. Plant the seeds about 1/2 inch deep and water lightly but consistently. Cilantro doesn't like heavy soil, so if yours is dense, loosen it up before planting. Watch out for waterlogging because cilantro roots are sensitive to cold, wet soil. Bonus tip: plant cilantro in small batches every couple of weeks so you always have fresh leaves ready. Chives are almost effortless in a shady winter garden. They stay green through cold weather, and the mild light helps them grow tender shoots without stress. Plant them in clumps, either from seed or divided bulbs, and keep the soil lightly moist. They don't need much attention, just steady watering and a little compost at the start. The only thing to watch for is overcrowding because chives can form thick clumps that slow down new growth. Bonus tip: cut the leaves close to the base to encourage fresh, straight regrowth. Garlic greens are one of the easiest winter shade crops to grow. You don't need full bulbs. You're growing the tender green shoots, and they thrive even with limited sunlight. Plant individual cloves about 2 inches deep with the pointed end up, and they'll sprout quickly in the cold. Shade keeps the greens mild and tender, perfect for cooking. The main warning is not to plant them too close together, because crowded cloves compete for nutrients and become thin. Bonus tip: snip the greens lightly and let them keep regrowing for multiple harvests. Miner's lettuce, also called Clatonia, is practically made for cold, shady corners. It grows beautifully in low light and stays crisp during the coldest months. The cooler the weather, the sweeter the leaves. Sow the seeds shallowly and water gently until they take off. Once established, it needs very little care. The only thing to avoid is compacted soil, because miner's lettuce prefers a loose top layer. Bonus tip: let a few plants mature fully so they reseed themselves and come back year after year without any extra work. Sorrel is a fantastic winter shade crop because it naturally prefers cooler weather and doesn't need strong sunlight to grow well.
In shade, sorrel develops a softer, lemony flavor that's perfect for soups and salads. It's tough, dependable, and keeps producing even when temperatures dip. Plant it from seed or small starts, giving each plant enough space to spread its leaves comfortably. Keep the soil consistently moist since sorrel dislikes drying out in cold air. The only thing to watch for is harvesting too aggressively, because young sorrel plants can slow down if you remove too many leaves at once. Bonus tip, snip the greens lightly and let them keep regrowing for multiple harvests. Radishes are surprisingly good at handling winter shade, especially the leafy tops and small roots they produce in low light. Shade helps them grow slower but sweeter, which works perfectly for winter salads. Plant the seeds about an inch apart in loose soil and let them settle in. Radishes need even moisture, especially in the cold, so avoid letting the soil dry out completely. The main thing to watch is overcrowding because crowded radishes form thin roots. Bonus tip, don't throw away the greens. They're edible and grow well even when the roots stay small in deep shade. Mizuna is a true winter warrior. It thrives in low light and stays tender even in frosty weather. The mild peppery taste becomes smoother when grown in shade, which makes it perfect for people who like greens without too much bite. Plant the seeds in rows or scatter them lightly, then thin them as they grow so the plants have room to spread their leaves comfortably. Keep the soil consistently moist since Mizuna dislikes drying out in cold air. The only warning is to watch for slugs early in the season since they love young Mizuna leaves. Bonus tip, harvest the outer leaves regularly and let the plant keep producing fresh growth all winter long. Endive does incredibly well in winter shade because the low light keeps it from becoming too bitter. Shade helps the leaf stay crisp, and cold weather tightens the heads nicely. To plant endive, give each seedling enough space to form a full head and use soil that drains well to prevent root rot. Water consistently and avoid soaking the base of the plant. The only caution is temperature swings because warm days followed by freezing nights can stress the plant. Bonus tip, if you prefer a milder taste, pick the leaves early when they're young and sweet.
Chicory is one of the hardiest shade-tolerant plants for winter gardens, and it produces leaves with a sturdy texture and rich flavor even in low light. Shade helps tone down some of its natural bitterness and keeps the leaves fresh for longer. Plant chicory about a foot apart in loose soil and water it deeply but not too often. It prefers steady moisture but hates when water pools around the roots. The main thing to remember is not to plant chicory in areas that freeze solid without cover because the roots can get damaged. Bonus tip, cut chicory close to the base and let the plant send up new tender leaves for a second harvest. Before we wrap up the list, I want to give you a quick bonus that will save you a lot of frustration in winter shade gardening. There are a few small mistakes that silently limit your harvest, and once you avoid them, your plants grow faster, healthier, and with almost no stress. The first mistake is overwatering. Shade already slows evaporation, and winter makes the soil even colder, so watering too often creates soggy conditions that roots hate. It's better to water less often but more intentionally. Check the soil with your fingers, not the calendar. Another mistake is planting everything too close. In winter, plants grow a little slower, but they still need space for air to move around them. Crowded plants trap moisture, and that encourages rot or mildew. Giving them a bit more room makes a huge difference. A lot of people also forget about soil temperature. Even shade-loving crops won't grow well if the soil is freezing cooled. A light layer of mulch goes a long way in holding just enough warmth to keep roots active. You don't need a lot, just a thin layer to protect the topsoil. There is also the mistake of treating winter shade the same way you treat summer shade. Summer shade might still have strong, reflected light. Winter shade is darker and colder, so it helps to choose crops that genuinely prefer low light, like the ones we just talked about. And finally, don't ignore airflow. Even in winter, fresh air is important for preventing disease. Avoid placing your containers or beds in tight corners where air sits still for days. Bonus tip, if your garden is extra cold, place a warm, dark-colored stone or brick near your plants. It absorbs daytime heat and releases it slowly at night, giving your crops a tiny boost without any extra work. So here's a quick reminder of what we covered. Shade-loving winter crops are some of the most reliable things you can grow when the cold sets in. Plants like spinach, mache, kale, Mizuna, chicory, and all the others we talked about can handle low light and low temperatures without much effort. You don't need a perfect garden or constant sunlight.
With the right plants and a few simple habits, you can turn shady winter corners into productive growing spaces. If you decide to try even one or two of these plants this season, you're going to notice how much easier winter gardening becomes. And it feels amazing to harvest fresh food when almost everyone else believes nothing grows in winter. If you enjoyed this video and you want more tips that make gardening simple and enjoyable, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot, and I'd love to have you here for the next one. And before you go, tell me in the comments which plant you plan to try first. I always read through them, and it helps me know what you want to see more of. I'll see you in the next one. Happy gardening.